Power Apps and Flow, that's what we're talking about today. And I put together some real world use cases because we're starting to roll out Power Apps and Flow with our customers. And we're finding very specific scenarios where we can be successful with these applications. And as an info path and SharePoint designer girl from way back, I'm pretty excited about what I'm seeing. But I think that there's still, there's a lot of education for us to be doing out there in the community because they are brand new products. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of questions because things are different for us now in this new landscape. Microsoft is rolling things out as quickly as they can. But what that means for us is that we don't always get a product that has every single bell and whistle and feature that we would hope for up front. But the good news is that we get a lot of cool stuff and they give it to us about as quickly as they can develop it and get it out. So I just wanted to talk through a few scenarios today that I thought could be useful and things that we've seen and done with some of our customers as well as internally at PAITgroup. And so we're not doing anything super deep dive or fancy. Really today is more about showing you some simple ways to make a significant impact quickly. As I'll do a quick, maybe it lets me continue. There we go. So Tom gave me a quick intro. I'm not going to spend much time on this slide. But my background personally, like I mentioned, I spent a lot of time in InfoPath and SharePoint Designer workflows back in the day. I kind of come from the server side of the house. I'm not a developer, and so these tools are really exciting for me as the no-code, low-code solution kind of person. I think it's great that we have all this cool stuff to play with. I do have a technical background, but I spend most of my time these days with the business and strategy and figuring out what the heck to do with Office 365 and SharePoint. So anyway, that's enough about me. What we are looking at in front of us right now, I'm pretty excited about all of the new cool features with Power Apps and Flow. I've been playing around with it as much as I can, and I think this is big, right? This is the next generation of SharePoint because we've got all this cool stuff in it. It's not just for SharePoint anymore. Previously we only deployed InfoPath forms and SharePoint Designer workflows into SharePoint, but Power Apps and Flow are bigger than that. We've got connectors that are getting into our back-end systems. We've got connectors for third-party cloud-based applications. And we've got connectors between all of our Office 365 apps. So we have the waffle. We have like 18 options in our waffle of ways to be productive. And Power Apps and Flow are really the glue for a lot of that. Between this and Teams, I think there's a lot of things that we can do now, not just to automate business process in SharePoint, but to automate business process across all of our applications. And I think that's pretty cool. That's why I have fireworks here. I'm pretty excited about this. So I'm going to talk through some of this stuff today, right? So for those that aren't familiar, you may be by now, but I'm going to tell you guys anyway. Microsoft Flow is a workflow-based tool in Office 365, and it's cloud-based, so you can do all of your design in the cloud, or in the browser, I should say. And it is going to eventually replace SharePoint Designer. We haven't seen that official transition happen yet. Oh, do we have a question? No. Okay, sorry. So we haven't seen that transition happen yet, but that's something that we anticipate to see in the future. So the first section, we're going to talk about Flow first and some examples and some user stories. Then I'm going to take you guys through Power Apps. I'm also going to cover DLP towards the end. We're going to go real high level into that too. The first question you may be asking, since SharePoint Designer is still around, and excuse me, and we're just now starting to look at Flow, I think the initial reaction is to go, okay, SharePoint Designer is out, we'll build with Flow. And that's not necessarily the scenario that is what I think in reality right now. As much as I'd love to dig in and say, yes, go totally all in for Microsoft Flow and for Power Apps, The reality is we're still finding our way through some of the missing pieces. So in my opinion right now, you kind of have apples and oranges. We've got SharePoint Designer, which can do some things that maybe Flow's not quite ready for. But then we also have a scenario with Flow where there's mobile capabilities and some cool new third-party integrations that SharePoint Designer can't handle. And so in my opinion, peace and love for both. We are still using both, sometimes in the same workflow. They're kind of connected together. So I think that there's room for both right now. That's my personal opinion. If you ask Microsoft, they'd say probably don't build in SharePoint Designer if you don't have to. So I think that's probably a good thing to keep in mind. You don't want to launch into any big projects with SharePoint Designer if you don't have to. It's going away. Avoid it where you can. But if you can build most of it in Flow and you're missing that one little piece, I'd hate to see you avoid it altogether. Just try to minimize the amount of work that you're doing in Designer. So the first user story that I have is about a customer that we have. They're in the energy industry. And they have these well reports that come in every day. And so as we started rolling out Office 365 and SharePoint for them, they had a little challenges with reports that were coming in. And they said, gosh, it'd be really nice that if these reports that came in automated from a system, they come in through email, it would be really cool if we could get this stuff into SharePoint a little more easily. And so we talked with them about some different ideas that we had, and ultimately what we had to get done at the end of the day was the documents really needed to be in SharePoint, and these documents were also going out to an executive team. And so we needed to make it really easy for this executive team to get access to that information. So previously, the documents would come in one email with one attachment. There would be multiple of these. Some poor admin would have to consolidate all these emails, take the attachment off of each, put them all back onto one email, and then send out a notification to that executive team to say, here's all your well reports, which isn't ideal, right? And we have a lot of these kind of scenarios at our job where sometimes we're just kind of doing things the way we've always done them, kind of assuming that there's no better route, right? Because you're going to say, well, why don't we just connect the system to SharePoint? Well, when you're talking about on-premises systems and you're talking about cloud and Office 365, it's not always very straightforward to just say, we'll just have this antiquated legacy system drop a document into SharePoint. And so we started talking about how can we use Microsoft Flow to get this work done. So the first demo I want to show you is the modern email-enabled library. And this is a pretty basic workflow, but I want to talk through some of the different scenarios. This isn't the only scenario that we have. But for those brand new to Flow, this should be a good introduction to it, right? So I'm going to create a new document library. And this is going to be, we'll call it, so when you have a new library or an existing one, you can add a flow to it. I'll give it a second to load. And you'll see that flow in the modern view is available from the ribbon. You can do flows on the classic libraries, but you won't have that flow available in the ribbon for you. You'll have to go into flow and connect it the other way. But from that drop down, you can create a flow. And you'll notice that it's actually going to suggest some ideas for you. So I like this about Flow because in SharePoint Designer, we were always kind of working from scratch. And I think we all learn a lot better if we kind of have something to work with or examples to start from. So I love the fact that Flow has all these templates. I also like the fact that it makes a suggestion on something super easy to implement the first time you go to create it. So if I select this, you'll notice it's going to allow me to save my email attachments to a SharePoint document library. So if you're on premises, you would just have email enabled your document library on-prem. If you're online, as you know probably, you can't do that anymore. You can't email enable a document library. So this is your alternative to that, and it will monitor your email inbox and strip that attachment from the email, and I'll walk through this here in a second. But it's the same concept, right? So when we start this, it is going to prompt me here that we're going to use templates from the email, Outlook, and SharePoint. So I'm just going to hit continue. It's going to pull those in automatically. And here you're going to see that I have the option to select a folder. So part of this scenario is that if you get an automated email into your inbox, it will strip the attachment. But you don't necessarily wanting it stripping every attachment on every email that comes in. And so we can actually select a folder. And you'll notice these are all the folders in my own personal inbox. And in here, I can select something like my Reports Flow demo folder. Okay? So that's the same thing I have over here in my inbox. You'll see this is my inbox here, and then here is my Reports Flow demo folder. So it's looking at my inbox. I gave it permission to do that. And when I hit continue, and then now I can pull from this folder. Now the other thing that I'm probably going to want to do is set up a rule. And if I go into Manage Rules and Alerts, you'll see that I have a couple in here, and my test report rule is one of those. So I have the ability to say if there's specific words in the subject, dump it in this folder. So if you've got an automated system, it probably comes from the same account, it probably has the same subject line, you ought to be able to predictably grab that document from the email because it comes in the same way every single time. Another scenario that's very similar, you'll see my echo sign reference in here. That's a rule that I actually have set up here at PAITgroup. I'm grabbing documents that come in from our e-signature system. So even if you don't have a need for an automated system, a legacy system that's sending reports, you still may have a fairly new e-signature solution. And if you're familiar with DocuSign, they have all this fancy SharePoint integration. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg, right? It's pretty pricey. So all you have to do, you get one of those $10 a person subscriptions and you use Flow. You have a very quick e-signature solution without having to put all that money in, maybe test it out and make sure you're ready for the real deal. So same thing there. So once we have that rule set up, I'm just going to set up a quick email here. Maybe things are running a little slow today. There it is. I'm going to email myself. And I'm going to attach a file. This is going to my well report or my e-signature signed document. And email it to myself. So I'm not going to walk through the entire workflow here. I have too many windows open. I'm going to show you one that's already built. Here it is. So in our documents library, maybe. Here we go. So that email, when it goes, it's going to strip that attachment and it's going to drop it in this document library because I've built a flow that's associated to this document library with that leave request. So really super simple and easy, but it's a quick way to automate a business process. I'm going to pull this back up here real quick. So this, all I had to do was set it to the folder. It's going to do everything else for me. So I've already selected the site, the folder path that it's going to be dropped into, and then all I have to do is click Create Flow. And as soon as that runs, it's going to be associated to that library, and then it's going to drop right in there. So I have too many windows open. I need to close a few of these. So you'll see that document A was just dropped in, and that all came in through my email. So you know, the one thing I really like about our e-signature solution and being able to strip that attachment is if my account manager is on vacation and he, you know, everything comes into him, right, because he gets all my signed contracts for us. He's out on vacation, and you know, typically it's going to sit in his inbox until he checks his email and forwards it on. If I'm lucky, that's while he's on vacation. If I'm not lucky, it's when he gets back. If we have that flow set up, it is going to run even though his Outlook isn't open. It's going to grab that attachment. It's going to drop it in SharePoint, at which point we can set off another email through Flow, a new notification that says, hey, there's a new contract in the library, and you know, the whole process kicks off. A new project can start, and my account manager doesn't even have to be back from vacation. So again, you know, one quick little thing in Flow. I barely had to know anything about Flow to set it up, and I've automated a business process, and I've done something that means an ROI to my business because business moves forward more quickly. Okay. Any questions about that specifically? Does the Flow work on lists? So there are flows that work on lists. So I don't know that, I don't think the attachment stripping workflow works for lists. Bob can probably answer that. I don't believe that works for lists, but you can run flows on lists, other flows, approvals, and that sort of thing. You could though, you know, sorry.
Oh, sorry. There was a question. I just want to make sure that people that are not following the chat window, there was a question, is this available on-prem for 2016? And Bob replied that it is available for SharePoint on-prem 2016.
Oh, that's not the question I answered though. Okay.
Oh, no, that you asked the one after that.
Yeah, I answered the question. Yep. Sorry. So if the
flow for other users,
Yes. So you do have to have permission. So you would have to know their password. You can't assign them. But within the creation of that flow, you would have the ability to go in and, like if you made a service account, for example, you could do it with that. But flows belong to the person. You can share them with a team of people that could then go in and manipulate them, but I don't believe you could assign it on someone's behalf without being able to authenticate them.
We have a couple more questions coming in. I'm trying to see it. If somebody was trying to grab the body of an email and populate it to a list, is that something that's possible?
Yeah, so in Flow, I don't know that we've done that yet. I know that that was one scenario that we ran. So what we did was we ran the Flow to strip the document out, and then we ran SharePoint Designer to grab more information about the document and update it that way. So I think some of those things are coming. I can tell you I've not, the fact that I'm not a developer, that's not something that like kind of out of the box appears for you. So I've not personally done that, but I do know you can run it in combination. If you can't get that to work in Flow, launch the Flow and then launch the SharePoint Designer workflow to pick up the pieces afterwards. You know, the other thing you might be able to do, if you do have Logic Apps available in Azure, that's kind of the step up from Flow in SharePoint. So you might be able to extend it there as well.
Great.
Yeah, so good point. So Bob mentioned too, as far as being able to, with a flow, if you're wanting someone else to run it, you can export the flow, you can template it now and share it out. So that would be another way for them to pick up that flow and be able to do that. And we can look at the admin side of that here because that's where you'll do that. Bob promises it works. All right, so the new features there, this is where all your flows are. Notice that it's My Flows. Flows that are shared with a team are under Team Flows.
Busy.
And so in here you'll also have the drop down. This is where you can see Save as a Template. And you also have the export features here for the zip file, or if you're taking it over to Logic Apps to build on it from there, then you can do that as well. So this is where you can find those features. to be able to get that out of there and share it with others. You also notice the Create From template up here. Okay. Right. I think the questions have slowed down.
So this answers how to deploy flows for different people. This is kind of the steps that you would take. You can create the template and apply it in different sites.
Yep, absolutely. So that's kind of the middle ground, right? Because you can't assign it for them, but they can grab it and take it and do something with it themselves. Some people require more hand-holding than others, right? But it's definitely a good step in the right direction.
I think that was it. I think there was another one about processing multiple attachments and naming conflict. Going back to the attachment processing when you strip and you pull the attachment out.
So it will actually update the existing document as a version if you drop in a document with the same name. So that would have to be something that you are conscious of. Maybe use that additional step to rename the document as part of the process to drop it in there. Or if it's your legacy system, maybe add the date or some unique identifier to the name of the attachment.
I think that was it for now. Thank you.
Okay. Alrighty. And Mark had a good comment there as well. Gosh, there's still questions coming in.
Yeah, they're still flowing.
Yes. So as far as the admin side of things, I do, assuming we get to it after all these questions, we do talk about the admin side of things and how you can find out what flows are being used and the quotas and all of that. So I do have an admin section once we get through the user stories here. Okay. So while the questions are still coming in, whoops, I went back one too far. I'm going to let Bob field some of those so I can kind of keep moving here, or we will never make it through, but these are all great questions. So a few tips and tricks. I did mention in there that flows can run from your classic views, but you do have to start from flow, creating new from scratch or whatever. So you go out and you attach to the SharePoint list instead of going from the ribbon. So no big deal though, they work on classic. The one thing about this as well, the email signatures that have graphics, you'll notice like a lot of folks have their company logo in their signature for the email. So if you know that will come into as an attachment. So it'll strip the attachment, but it'll also grab your picture signature and drop that in as well. So just an FYI on that. And we didn't talk very much about adding owners to create a team flow. Let me jump back out and show you that real quick. I kind of got distracted there with all the questions. But in here, when we are managing our flows, we do have the option to add other owners. You'll notice I clicked the little people button next to the flow. So this is where I can go in and I can add additional users. And then they will also be able to modify and edit that flow, kind of a co-authoring scenario with me. This is also helpful if you've got something running for maybe a department and you get promoted or you move or something and somebody else is responsible for maintaining that flow, that they could jump in and kind of manage that as well. All right, and the templates, I also wanted to go through those real quick. If you go out to flow.microsoft.com, now you notice when I said create new flow, there was a bunch of templates available. They're pulling from this template library. So if I go to flow.microsoft.com, I can go to templates, and then I have a whole bunch of templates in here. So lots of stuff to play with, to choose from. And you'll notice, again, it's not just SharePoint. It's third-party tools. It's integration with PowerApps. It's integration with Outlook, third-party stuff, Daily Digest from CNN News. And, of course, you can always search. So let's say I want a Salesforce connector. Maybe that lets me search here. Here, just locked up on me. There it goes. then when I search the templates for Salesforce, then I get all the connectors for Salesforce that are available. So quick and easy search solution if you want to go hunting for whether or not your third-party tool is available in one of those templates. So I definitely recommend that you go out. There's some pretty cool stuff in here. The connectors in 365 are very cool. PowerApps, Flow, and Teams all have connectors that you can play with. And they've been doing some pretty cool things to kind of help with that whole visibility across different platforms. So good stuff there. Okay, so we still need to keep our execs happy. I'm going to go through this kind of fast because we had a lot of questions and this one isn't quite as exciting. But we did talk about briefly how the executives are receiving a report in their inbox. Even though you have documents that are already loaded into SharePoint, we do have that scenario where executives love their email. They're still going to want some kind of reminder in their inbox that says, hey, go look at this. You kind of need that prompt sometimes. So you still have classic alerts. Those are still going to work for you. You can still sign up for that daily summary. So in their case, they could do that. But you also have a flow where you can build a modern alert, and it's just going to be send an email when a new item is added. And that's, you could do that as well. So depending on whether or not you want to roll up or if you want that immediate alert, either one of those is still an option. The only thing I've noticed is that when you are sending an email alert, there's still not an HTML editor available. So you do have to kind of do some finagling if you want to edit that email alert within the flow. So if you get out any HTML editor and you just do it the easy way, kind of building things like you would in Microsoft Word, and you output that HTML, you can throw that in there as well. So that is an option if you're feeling brave enough to go that way. So I did want to go through the mobile side of things as well. So we do have mobile flows available. Everything that you're seeing kind of show up in your Flow admin panel, that's also going to be available within your mobile device. So let me pull that up here. All right, so here's Flow. To load. All right, so here's where you can see your activity feed, and you have all of the flows. You can tell that Save Contracts to SharePoint Library, that's one of my flows. It's run successfully for 2 times. You can even see kind of here where you have the amount of time it took to run. This is especially helpful when you can actually go out now and see if you have a long-running flow, it's taking a little while to go through. You kind of have a better idea of, is it stuck, is it still running, that sort of thing. And you can get a good feel for how long those are going to take. Okay, so we've got all of those in there. We can browse. And then we have buttons. So these are flows. You can create these flows from your mobile device if you wanted to. But I think the buttons are kind of fun. It's a very quick flow that you can run. In this case, it's emailing colleagues that I'm out sick and to block my calendar off, which I think is pretty awesome. You're not feeling good, right? You don't want to get out of bed and email everybody. You grab your phone, you press this button, and it's going to run a flow on the back side. It's going to email everybody. It's going to block your calendar. We'll rate that later. And so you could build kind of personal custom flows with this with one press, and you can do it from your mobile device. So you may find, Bob always runs late to work. You could do a late to work button as well in the flow. So, so I think that's kind of fun. It does in fact create a calendar item on your calendar. So Bob, I have a request though. I wanted to cancel all my meetings for me and not just block off the calendar. So if you could make that happen, that would be awesome. Anyway, so buttons are fun. Go check those out. All right, so here's all your flows, and so this is the full list. You can see the plus sign up at the top right corner. So here's where you can create from template or create a flow on your phone. I probably won't use that a whole lot, but maybe to create my buttons, something super simple I might do from my phone. And if I go back to activity, the one thing I didn't mention yet, I don't want to give too much away here coming up, but I also have approvals. So this is something I've been waiting for a really long time. I do want to be able to do approvals in Flow from my mobile device. So that is something that I think is pretty cool. It's something we've needed for a really long time. Any questions on the mobile stuff? All right, so a few tips and tricks, and I didn't show you guys this, but you do get some push notifications. So I find that to be pretty nice. I like to know when my flows run or maybe when a new document's been added to the library. So again, going back to that alert notification, maybe I don't want an email, but I get that flow notification that comes in. You do have to, of course, install the app on your mobile device. I've noticed the flow notifications that you've got to be logged in. Although it remembers your password now for like, I think it's 90 days. So this part's a lot easier now. Before I found myself having to go back and I had to keep logging into my Flow app so that I got those notifications. But it's the cache for that password now, it remembers it for a lot longer. So I've noticed that it will keep running for me. I don't have to pay quite as much attention to it. So another tip, use the button options. It's something fun to play around with. And I also mentioned on these, PowerSoft is my mobile demo software that I use. Really solid software, so I get a lot of questions on that, so I threw that in there as well. If you are implementing mobile apps or Flow and you want to like demo this stuff on your desktop, just like I'm demoing to you guys, not everybody's in the same office anymore. That's a really fun software. It's really easy to use, and I think there's like a free trial, there's a free version, so that's good stuff. All right, question. Oh, looks like Bob has it. So there was a question for those not following the chat. Are mobile flows available for Android and Mac? Yes, they are. All right, so other things to look for, third-party integrations. Again, I'm really big on the connections and using things that aren't out of the box necessarily with SharePoint. And what I love, I miss Word automation services. So for those of you who don't know what that is, on premises you had this ability to convert a Word document into a PDF as part of your workflow process. And I think we all do that to some level, right? You have a contractor working on, you publish it to PDF, and then you ship it out to the customer. Word automation services not quite yet available in Flow, so you can look for third-party tools like Muhimbi. They've had a really great tool. They had an on-prem tool for converting files, so I was thrilled when I found this add-in. Now, you'll notice some third-party tools are free and many are not, and so I think that this one is a paid connector that you have to buy to use, but something that could be very well worth your time if you're automating some processes. You go through an approval workflow with Word, and then you publish the PDF, and then you can send your notifications that it's final, maybe push it to your portal from your collaboration space, that sort of thing. So definitely go looking for those third-party tools. They're good stuff. Okay. So recent Flow updates. We are now able to manage the lifecycle of flows. So that was the import-export thing we talked about that Bob mentioned in the chat window. You can save as template. You can export now. You can take your flows into Logic Apps in Azure. So much better ability there to be able to manage those and to be able to share them and to be able to get more flows going across the organization. Like I mentioned, we can convert those flows. And there is Flow integration now with OneDrive for Business. That's not something that I've tried quite yet. and you can publish a template, which we talked about. So I did include a link here. All my slides will be published afterwards, but those are the latest updates, things that I had. I probably should have thrown in here. I believe the ability to do the metadata lookups is now in there as well. That's probably something that I should have added to that list too. So, all right. Can the flow copy files cross-site collection? I've not tried that. I'm trying to think if there's a flow in there that would do that. I've not, Jack, that's not something I've tried. Maybe Bob can answer that one. But will it integrate with other site collections or backend systems? So yeah, the flows will integrate with, if you use the connectors, they do have other systems. You do have to publish your information through the Enterprise Data Gateway in order to get access to that data. So that is something that you might have to look at if you're for your on-prem systems. So quick summary on Flow, and then we're going to move into PowerApps. And I do have to hurry a little bit. I know we're lots of great questions, and I have a lot of good content to cover. So Flow replaces email-enabled libraries. So when you think user solutions, think e-signature, automated reports from legacy systems. Something I didn't talk about were scanning solutions. I think we all kind of think of like the Kodaks and the knowledge lakes of the world, when sometimes maybe we just need an email-enabled Xerox machine that could drop that attachment into SharePoint. So something to think about there. You might be able to do some, we're in the mid-market. We like our cheap solutions. You do want to use your mobile apps for notifications, approvals, and you can even build flows from that. And look for third-party integrations to replace functionality like your word automation services. And keep an eye out because a lot of this stuff is gradually working its way back into the Flow templates. So just keep updated on the new stuff so that you don't go buy something that might just be released. All right. Any questions before I move on to PowerApps? Alrighty. All right, so the quick description on PowerApps is that hopefully it's going to be the InfoPath replacement. I don't think that's been formally said yet either, but we're definitely trying to get there, right? We are trying to get to the point where PowerApps is fully functional and we get rid of that awful legacy program that we've been dealing with for far too long. And so PowerApps, again, it's more than just a form replacement for InfoPath, though. It's not just SharePoint. If Bob says it's a replacement, I'll call it a replacement. It's more than just forms for SharePoint. It is the ability to have mobile applications that connect into your backend systems, that connect things like all of your different site collection information, all of your, any third-party connectors you can get in there. You can pull from Azure SQL. So a lot of really good stuff there. And it's really kind of mobile first, but PowerApps is also being worked into the interface in SharePoint. So we're going to have inline forms. If you guys watched Virtual Summit, that's coming too. I can't demo that yet. It's not out. But that's something I definitely am hoping to see since we saw it at Virtual Summit. I'm hoping to see that come out here at Ignite soon, but we'll see. I don't know what's in store there. All right. So our scenario here is that we have a lot of users that are overwhelmed tracking paperwork. We still have those awful Excel files that are kind of roaming around the organization, Word templates, outdated InfoPath forms. So we still have a lot of that. We have a lot of attachments lost in our email. No one knows the status because every time you use a Word document or an Excel document, you can't track how many of those you got in any particular week or month. You can't track, how many are outstanding and the fact that 8 of them are assigned to the person who's on vacation. So there's no dashboard, no analytics. All of that stuff is just kind of lacking, right? So this is what we're dealing with in terms of our problem with forms. So we're going to jump into a vacation request demo. I want to show you guys what it looks like first in the browser, and then we can kind of look at how to build it, because it's actually way easier to build than I would have ever imagined. But I want to kind of show you the working one here first, just to prove that I could do it. Let's see. All right. So here's my working one. You'll see that it is a basic SharePoint list. There's really nothing special about this list. It just happens to be, go away, in the modern view. So I called it my modern leave request, right? Because we can kind of do this version of it in SharePoint now in the classic list. It's just a list. It's our leave summary, which is our title, our start date, our end date, our leave description. It's just kind of more detail over where we're going. Our manager's name, approval status, and a leave type. This is something that was actually requested today from a customer. They said, hey, I want to do a leave request in Flow and PowerApps, and can I do it? And I said, yeah. And he, choice fields are relatively new, so that's not something I had available in previous demos. So I went ahead and added that in here today so I could show you guys. And the people field is also fairly new in the modern UI, and so I added that even though we already have one. So you will see a little bit of duplicate there. All right, so you'll also notice I have PowerApps here where I can create an app. So that's actually what I did previously. You'll also notice that here I have a modern leave request view, and that is actually my PowerApps view. So if I click New, you'll notice that my inline is still a basic form, right? So creating a PowerApps view for my list doesn't actually change the default view here. That's the inline form that I think we saw at Virtual Summit, right? So if I go over and I view my PowerApp, there we go. You're going to notice it takes me to this view where I can choose to edit that PowerApp, or I can open it from here. So that's what I'm going to do. So fair warning, I have a tendency to work in Microsoft Edge. It doesn't work in Edge. So when you try to launch that PowerApp, or you try to create a new PowerApp from a list, Edge doesn't cooperate with me. I don't know if Bob has any feedback there, but use Internet Explorer, just works, or Chrome, as Bob says. So just avoid Edge when you're working with PowerApps, and you'll be much happier. All right, so this is what that leave request looks like when you load in the web browser version of it. And I can show you what that looks like in my mobile app as well, but it looks exactly the same. It's going to look just like this. So I'm able to interact with it on the screen. I can click here, and I can see the details there. I can delete it. I can click back. I can add new. And then in here, I am able to, I can interact with it, click my dates. Here's another one. I want my date picker. I just want to click on the date. I don't want to have to click OK. But that's eventually. Hopefully those things will come. All right, so here's my dates. Here's my title. So where do we want to go today? I'm going to Dallas here in a couple of weeks from Dallas trip. And I'm going to be on vacation. So my leave type, this is my drop-down menu. Again, this is fairly new. I don't think we had that before, but I'm going to log that as vacation time. And then I can select my approving manager. You'll see there's nothing in the drop-down, but if I start typing, then that's going to pop up for me as well. And I've got my little checkbox, and then I can submit from here. So that's all there is to it. Again, it's just a view for your existing list. It's kind of a layer on top. And then I'm going to show you guys how I built this out. It's actually pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Okay. All right. So let's go out.
Hey, Steph.
Yes.
Am I off mute? Oh, awesome. Yeah, I made a comment earlier. If you're doing one of these from scratch, a blank, say create a new site collection or a new list or custom list, throw some dummy data in there. Could be one item. When you go to create a new Power App, it's going to make life a lot easier just because you won't know what the hell you're looking at the time when you're in there. At least a day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Lesson learned.
I learned that the hard way.
As did I.
Yep. Okay, so, and I'm actually, I'll show you here how to build one. So we're just going to, actually, let's go to home. I want to show you guys this real quick before we get into it. So you can also embed, so using the embed web part in the modern UI. So I did want to show you guys this real quick. You do have that option to like plug it into the page somewhere. I also have it in my Microsoft Teams, so you can add it as a tab. It'll load just like it does in the browser from your Microsoft team here too. So a couple quick FYIs there before I build this out. Okay, so we're going to build a new list. Okay. So now all I need to do then, I'm going to, kind of particular about my title, I like to rename it. Summary, do my date. Oops, where'd it go? So quick, I may only do a couple of these since we're a little tight on time here. Use description. So I'm going to do a few fields. I don't want to go through all of it right now. But all I have to do once I have my fields in place, and now Bob reminded me, I need to fill it in, because if I do this right now, then it's going to be empty, and you'll see here in a minute. So we'll create some ideas. I think I saw a few ideas in my chat window over here. At least one. Any questions while I'm filling this stuff in? Okay, SharePoint-Alooza. I see you, Mark. So for those that don't know, Mark Rackley hosts SharePoint-Alooza in Branson. Good plug, Mark. All right, so I got a couple items in there. So all I'm going to have to do is click PowerApps and click Create an App. Leave request and click Create. And it should bring all of those fields in here for me. So the list controls are pretty basic. I will tell you that Laura Rogers has some pretty good tutorials out there on things like the repeating fields and lookup lists, things like that. So go check out, if you don't know Laura Rogers, it's iwmentor.com. She's got a blog, and Wonder Laura, she's got some really good stuff out there. And you'll notice it takes a little bit. This is why I didn't build it up front. I wanted to show you guys the cool stuff. But what it's doing is just kind of creating all those mappings. And so you'll notice it's given me kind of a default template here. If I click on this information, then when I come over to this side, this is my panel, right? So I can click over here. I can see all my information. I've got my properties that I can play with. But you'll see that everything kind of comes in well. And you'll notice that we needed a couple of things to show up here. because otherwise your template would be blank and you wouldn't have any properties to then kind of manipulate and deal with. So we scroll down. The other thing that I think you may go looking for is, well, this is nice, but what about my edit screen or my add new screen? So on your left-hand side, you have your edit form. So if you click there, then that's what's going to give you your detail here as well. So you're going to have all of that information to mess with. Now, if you want to hide fields, you can do that now as well. If I create this modified by, don't need to see that on my form, I can come over and maybe if it's going to let me scroll down here. It's not letting me scroll. Try this. Yeah.
Change your sizing.
Yeah, that's what I went to do, and then it disappeared on me. Hang on, let me find my browser window.
There was a little tiny little scroll thing. Try that. I've run into that myself.
There it is. Uh-oh. That's where it went. It's hiding. Hold on a minute.
You gotta go in the editor.
Yeah, my browser closed. Oh, maybe this one. There we go. Awesome. Okay. So if I resize again, is it going to disappear on me? Let me drag it around. So you guys are learning with my troubleshooting with Bob. So now you know, if this happens to you, just resize your window.
You just had
here to learn
scroll
today.
down. Just expand.
There it goes. It didn't.
Give it a second. It was just there. Click on that down arrow on the scroll down.
Yeah, it's not. Okay, well, I don't want to spend too much time on this because we only have 20 minutes left, but I can't use my down either. So if you want to hide something, we'll just do it with title instead, even though you don't typically want to. You see this little purple checkbox here? You could just uncheck that, and you'll see that it hides it from the screen. So you'll notice a lot of user-friendly controls here in terms of your screen options, and you do still have an advanced options item here as well. So at this point, really, you can preview it. You can save it from here. And then you'll notice a publish shows up. So you need to save, and then you need to publish it out as well. And so that's what makes it available. You may also need to check we'll go into the admin panel here in a minute, but you may also need to check who it can be shared with as well, because you can kind of hide that form from everyone. I lost my window where all the chat's happening. Go back there. Okay. Alrighty, any questions on PowerApps? So it's really that easy to create the form. Again, I'm not a developer, I'm not a designer. I came in, I just created the PowerApp. It gives me the template, it gives me the fields, it gives me user-friendly kind of controls so that I can modify things at a basic level. But you'll also notice there are some drop-downs up here where you can do some additional things like a background image. And the more you expand what you're doing, the more of that code that might sneak in that you might need to know what you're doing there. So after creating the form, how do we connect it with the flow? So think of this form as you don't actually connect the form to the flow per se. If you're adding and submitting, when you check this box here, that's just going to submit back into this list. And as long as you have the workflow associated to this list, it's going to kick that flow off. Now there are buttons you can play with that will launch the flows as well, but try to think about it in basic terms. It's still a form, it's a view, and it's a workflow. And they're going to work just kind of how InfoPath and SharePoint Designer did. So don't overthink it in that scenario. That form is going to add a new item to the list, and when you add a new item to the list, that can kick off the flow. So just to kind of break things down. So if we want to see that on the phone, since Bob's bringing that up, I can show you guys that here as well. Yep. All right, so you can see all of my forms here. You can see the new one that already came up. You'll notice I'm going to click the one that I've already completed. And you'll see that it loads just like it did in the browser. So this is my phone. You'll notice everything's nice and big so that I can create and edit and all of that from here. All my date pickers work and all of that stuff. So, and this is obviously an iPhone, but you can do that on Android now as well. Good stuff. All right, I know we've got 15 minutes left. I got more content for you guys. I do want to keep moving, but definitely keep putting those questions in the chat window here. So again, I do have issues when I try to use the Edge browser. Don't use Edge, use IE or Chrome. And then for those that do have on-premises data, you do have the on-prem data gateway for Flow and PowerApps, so that's what's going to get you access into those servers. But note that that functionality is not included with Office Business and your E1 SKUs. So you're not going to be able to get connected to that on-premises information. You would have to upgrade maybe to an E3, an E5, etc. So that's kind of, there's a lot of details on what's available with which version of the licensing, but that's kind of the high-level breakdown there. Okay, so now we have our recent PowerApps updates, the choice field, the people picker field, those are all working. There's new PowerApps integration with Teams and Power BI. So I've not messed with Power BI. I can give you guys a quick preview on it's added into my team as a tab. I do have, you can build offline applications now, so you can test those in airplane mode if you're not sure. And so this is going to be a good scenario for forms that workers have in the field, maybe even the plant if the plant doesn't have reliable Wi-Fi, manufacturing plants and things like that. So really good stuff for those in the field. We're finally able to take those apps offline and get that information back into the system when they come back online. So the one other comment there, what's in preview, is the record level security for the Common Data Service. That's if you have that database that kind of collects your information from Power BI and PowerApps and Flow. You can break down that level of security. So I'm not going to get in that far today, but just know it's out there in preview. I haven't heard many updates. I think that came out in May. So I don't know if too many people are using that quite yet. So quick summary, use PowerApps instead of InfoPass as much as humanly possible. Please don't implement InfoPass unless you, I don't know a scenario where you have to. Hopefully you go HTML forms or something. Creating a Power App is considered a view, so it's important to note it's just sitting on top of a SharePoint list. And use Power Apps for easy access to mobile forms. And you can generate simple approval flows for mobile and email approvals. So you got to see a quick preview of that as well. All right, so I do want to get into some of this advanced functionality. I do have a hard cutoff at 8 o'clock today, so I'm going to try to get through as much of this as possible. But from an environment perspective, one of the biggest concerns when we have our IT department, the business users go, yay, I can build flows and I can build apps and I can connect to Twitter and everything else I want to do, Facebook, whatever. And IT department, you can see them cringing in a corner like, no, no, make it stop. And so what Microsoft has done is provided us an admin center. This admin center, you can build kind of environments to give different people different levels of access. You are going to have, I have a screenshot here in a minute, but 2 main levels. It's basically the ability to customize what social things you can have access to, or if you just want to cut them all off, that's an option as well. So it just gives you the opportunity to break things down into what they consider an environment and provide roles and kind of rights around that. And that also gives us that ability to add data loss prevention policies to an environment so that you can set different policies to kind of classify different content with different rules. And that can be applied. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you can do this. You can have an environment per area. So if you've got geolocated common data service where you can have them across different areas, whether US, Canada, Australia are the examples here, but you can build different environments, both dev, test, and prod, and have them kind of located where they should be, right? In accordance with all of the rules and laws that some folks have with where their data has to sit. And then now what's really great, you have that ability to export, to import, to move solutions across environments. And so now we really get into that dev, test, prod scenario. Let's build it in one environment and move it to the other so that we can really kind of open things up a little more maybe when we're in dev and lock them down a little more when we're in production. But lots of good security becoming available around this stuff now. Kind of building on that, the policies I mentioned before, you have two main groups here, the business data only and then no business data allowed. And this is where you can start configuring your access to those third-party apps and that sort of thing. So in these policies, you can apply them to the environment specifically that you've created, or you can make them tenant-wide. And so this is really the happy medium. I call it the fenced-in backyard, where you can kind of give them room to play where they think they're free, but they actually have a fence and that you can prevent them from hurting themselves or the company losing intellectual property. So it's a great compromise, but it's something that you definitely have to kind of dig in and learn about a little bit, understand the ramifications of the policies that you're implementing across the organization. Everybody's quiet now. No more questions. Okay, so if someone does try to create a new flow and it doesn't meet that policy that you have set for that particular person in their environment, they will be prompted. It'll let them know that your work is not lost, but it's suspended, and that's because it conflicts with the company policies. So it's not going to totally destroy your work. It's something that you can then go investigate. Open your ticket with a help desk or whatever, and have them review that what you're trying to do and why, so that you could potentially get moved into a different environment or group of permissions. So licensing, just a high level, this is super important to understand. It's something that I didn't understand until recently. But the DLP functionality, that advanced ability to kind of control what the organization can do or not do, that does come with Plan 2. That is not included kind of with that out-of-the-box plan that you get with Office 365. But the good news is, and this was really good news in my mind, the Flow Plan 2 only has to be purchased for those that are actually doing the administration. So for that access into the admin panel, for the ability to create policies, you're only upgrading those people. So this is not $15 per user across the whole organization. It is only for your admins. So that's really where I think that'll be key in making sure that folks understand that, so that you can get those policies deployed, and that, I think that's helpful. Is there a question? I'll let Bob answer the debug question in the chat window there. I'm going to keep moving here, but yeah. So the different levels of flow here, you'll notice you get more runs with the additional plans. You'll also notice you get quicker checks on those flows, so meaning they'll run more often, they'll go looking for stuff more often. And then you also get the premium connectors. So things like Salesforce, that's not going to be free. You're going to have to pay a fee to use that connector, which makes sense, right? I think Salesforce and some of the other more common high-end applications are going to require that paid connector. So just something to look for. It's not too bad. Again, you're only paying, you mix and match, you're only paying for the functionality that that person needs in order to build the flow or to manage the DLP policy, you don't actually have to implement that for everyone, right? So keeping the cost down and keeping it reasonable. Also, with the number of runs that you have for Flow, so you're looking at 2,000 runs per user if you're on the out-of-the-box plan. That is times the number of users you have, and that is pooled. So it's not like if one person is a heavy workflow user, they're going to hit 2,000 and quit. You will have that full number of 2,000 times the number of users. Everyone pulls from the pool, and then you are able to kind of monitor that and act accordingly. So you do have the quotas thing. I do want to jump out and show you guys where the quotas are. Let's see. A few of these windows down. So admin.flow.microsoft.com is an easy way. You can also get there from the Office 365 admin panel. Here's where your environments exist. Here's your tenant, and here's your quotas. So your number of runs, I think someone asked at the very beginning, how do I know how many runs my environments had? This is where that's at. It's under your tenant. So you can see we have 50,000 total flow runs. As far as I know, I don't know anybody who's like running out of flows right now. I don't know if there's an official answer, Bob, but as far as I know, they're not really checking that yet. Nobody's really hitting those maxes, or so I don't know if there's an official, like what happens when you run out of flows. I don't have that answer yet, but for the moment, I don't think it's anything you have to worry about. So if you want the detail behind that, you can click this link here at the bottom that will give you that detail. I'll open this up for you guys real quick, where you can see kind of the owner, you can see the name of the flow, and you can see the runs consumed here. So it'll give you a good idea of kind of who's hitting the workflows harder than somebody else and who owns that flow. So that's about as good as the reporting is right now. But I'd love to see this hit the user adoption pack. In Power BI, there's a user adoption preview content pack, and I'd love to see this data in there. But so any questions on that?
Any questions?
Keep moving. So quick FYI on licensing for PowerApps. You've got your licensing here, same concept, right? So you're going to need Plan 2 to do your enterprise level administration of the environments and the user policies. And this one's going to cost you, this one's $40 a user, but this really, this has the common data service behind it. So if you're wanting to feed information back into a common database for reporting purposes and all of that, then you're going to want one of these upgrades here. And the policies, of course, will be the heavy hitting cost there for you. Oh, and I didn't finish that slide. Let's skip that one. Okay, so shoot, let me go back. I missed the slide here. All right, so how do we learn more? There's lots of good info out there. I'm constantly having to take in new content, learn it quickly so that I can get it back out to everyone. I've noticed that flow.microsoft.com, PowerApps.microsoft.com, if you go to Learn in the navigation, there is guided learning. This is a good place to start for the basics. They'll give you kind of the rundown on how to get started, how to launch things, what your admin panel does, that sort of thing. So good for basics. Then if you really want business user ideas, things that people are implementing that kind of relate to, for me, it's one thing to look at how to do it, but in order to get ideas for the business, I need to go see what everyone else is doing. So I think Laura Rogers does a great job of that. She's got Power Hour out on YouTube where she's been doing a lot of this stuff. Audrey Gordon, she works for Microsoft. I've noticed that she's kind of popped up here recently, and she's doing some pretty interesting things. She did a calendar app that she posted on YouTube here in the last couple of weeks. So I think that's really great stuff. I'd love to go and see more on YouTube. I think that's a great place to get ideas. And of course, where I get all my good content before these sessions, I go make sure I'm up to date Twitter is always a great place for that. Hashtag PowerApps, hashtag Microsoft Flow. Lots and lots and lots of really good content. So if you want to learn about this stuff, you want to start digging in, there's tutorials out there. You just kind of have to know where to look because there's not a whole lot of this stuff yet, kind of how we're used to with other things in SharePoint. Okay. So kind of wrapping up here, from a business perspective, right? That's kind of my world. I sit between the technology and the business users, and I'm always looking for those specific business needs. We don't implement these things for the sake of implementing workflow or for the sake of implementing forms. We do them because we have specific business needs, and that's really where the user adoption is going to come from. That's where you're going to make the most business impact, and that's where you're going to get that ROI from. So really good stuff. You know, if you're worried about those intellectual property issues and the third-party tools and all the connectors, definitely check out the upgraded policies that are available, or the upgraded licensing that's available, so you can get those policies in place. Make sure you go learn about that stuff before you implement too much of it. And definitely keep looking for future enhancements. You guys really need to check out Ignite. If you can't be there in person, channel9.msn.com has all the stuff that comes out from Ignite, so there'll be a lot of really great presentations in there too. Yeah, and as Bob says, enhancements are almost weekly, which for those of us in the space where, you know, we love this.
I'll play Stephanie, I guess. Yeah, so for the enhancement statement, I work with that team for Flow and PowerApps, and we are making changes weekly, so I'm on those triage calls. So when they make that change, it goes into our bug or field area where we push the stuff out. It goes out pretty quickly. So if you push stuff out to user voice, we're actually reading that stuff, and we are making those changes as per what the user asked for. So please use user voice.
It sounds like we lost Stephanie. It's 8 o'clock, so we will wrap up. I think this is an excellent presentation. I want to thank her. She's not on, but I'd like to thank Stephanie for taking time to present to us, and we'll be sharing this information online. So, and Bob, I'd like to thank you as well for joining us and answering questions. So with that, we will see you next time.
Just wanted to thank you for having me on, and a lot of really great questions today. I appreciate Bob being on, so lots of really good questions. But thanks, everybody.